And welcome back to Houston at the George R. Brown Convention Center, the Texas High School Coaches Association 87th convention, as we're joined now by the athletic director of the Church-Cibolo Universal City ISD School District, which is Steele High School and Clemens High School. And this guy to my right has certainly had a strong attachment to both over the years. He's Scott Lehnhoff, the AD of the school district, and his dad was a longtime AD. The stadium's named after mom and dad. He quarterbacked the Clemens Buffaloes. He coached the Steel Knights, and now you're in charge of the entire athletic program. You've had a heck of a journey, but it's centered in that Church-Cibolo area.
I have born and raised there, and definitely a product of that community.
Well, you had a successful, albeit short, coaching career, because you're only, what,
38.
38.
Mm-hmm.
But you've moved on to the administrative side. How much are you still in touch with what's happening on the field, and how much of it is administrative?
So much of it now is administrative. I think I do a pretty good job of still staying in touch with it. Football will always be a passion and a love of mine, and still try to stay current with what's going on. Watch a lot of college football, things that are going on there. Of course, have a lot of day-to-day interaction with David Sines and Jared Johnson, our athletic coordinators, football coaches, and see what those guys are doing and the tweaks they're making and the challenges they have. And so I'm staying in touch with it. I don't think it's something that I'll ever lose a passion for that and for what those kids are doing out there on the field.
Is an athletic director job more or less stressful than a head football coaching job?
I think it's just different. I think it's not so much stress from the parents. I told someone the other day, I feel like my stress is now I feel like I can control a little bit better. Whereas a football coach, there were some things that you couldn't control, the speed and the size of that corner you had, or the how unreasonable maybe that parent was being about their child, and the what they thought about their own kid at times, and so I think the stresses are just a little bit different, and they're maybe a little bit more manageable than they were as a head football coach.
You got two fine programs, and when I say fine programs, I'm not talking about just football. I think if you look at Steele and Clemens, there's a few programs that need a little bit of a boost, but by and large, you're pretty much good across the board. Is that as an athletic director? Is that part of the goal, is to have good programs in each sport, boys and girls?
Definitely, and you said it, boys and girls, and we hired assistant coordinators for the first time last year in our district that are mainly on the girls' side of things, and to give them some leadership and some direction, and which is huge for our district, never having that. And you're right, we've got a lot of great things going on, a lot of different programs that are having success, and very similar. Those schools and those communities are maybe more similar now than they ever have been, from whether it's talent level or the achievements of the programs within them, and that takes a lot of stress off of me and my job. I think a lot of AD challenge when you look at Northside and what Stan's got, or Karen or Northeast, and you have such big discrepancies from one program to the next,
right.
and oftentimes you're making changes and making decisions that may hurt one to help the other. And right now I'm in a luxury position to where our two are very similar. We're doing a lot of the same things. A decision for one of them is probably a good decision for both of them.
I noticed there's it's not just on the field, but there seems to be kind of a rivalry aspect between the growing town of Cibolo and the growing town of Church, two really fast-growing areas. How do you sometimes people in the community will say, "Oh, well, we want our own thing out here at Steele. We don't want to be involved with that," or vice versa. But you guys, it seems like on the athletic side and in the school district side, y'all are able to kind of shut that out and really do what's right for everybody.
Yeah, I think we've got one common message to our coaches. We're going to respect one another, and no matter what school we're at, and we're going to above all that is the SCUC brand, and Jared and David are two guys that understand that as our athletic coordinators, and they push that on a day basis. Yes, that shield is important at Steele High School, and that SC is important at Clemens High School, and it's a source of pride. But in the end, no one's bigger than that district brand, and we really want the district of SCUC to really shine through as well.
When talking to David earlier today, I find it's really interesting just how much interchanging SCUC ISD and Judson ISD with their coaching staffs. If you look at all 5 of those coaching staffs, a lot of them have worked together at both districts. Yeah. And you look at, Rodney, he learned his coaching over at Clemens with Greg Farrar, who ironically is rejoining him at Judson. Your two guys have roots with Judson ISD. I find it interesting, that whole FM 78 corridor, and your dad and D.W. Rutledge, of course, helped build those traditions at those schools that have expanded on to other schools. But is it by design that they get your guys and you get their guys? Or do you just know if I go get some of their guys, they're going to be good coaches and vice versa?
I think when you're hiring coaches, you want to see what that person has lived, and that's what I'm looking for. And that's you said it right. It goes all the way back to it's Coach Rutledge and Dad in that area, and the way that they did things. And I knew if we had a guy that coached under DW, played under DW, and that guy had lived it and knew what the expectation was. And I think the same thing can be said for Dad's program in Clemens High School. Coaches are going to coach hard. They knew the expectations of the job, and it's crazy the way that tree has branched.
Yeah. Mainly from two guys.
From two guys, and Mike Jinks was a huge part of that for me in my life, and really I go back and who are my 2 biggest influences as a coach, my dad and Mike Jinks, and Mike probably would have said DW. So my path is also from Coach Rutledge as well. So it's we don't look too far for coaches, and oftentimes I'm checking that Judson directory to see who wants to move, and they're looking the same way. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's good to see that whole area of town do well. I mean, I know Judson in particular is a big rival for your school district teams, and it's the same way the other way for them and you guys. But in a weird sort of way, as much as you want to beat them, do you think that the 2 school districts kind of pull for each other also?
I think so. I mean, and really going back to Sean's, I mean, I think those 3 staffs have great respect with one another. And Brad Mulder over at Clemens, and some of those guys there, Gilbert Rodriguez, who we just hired from San Marcos, who was at Judson, and those 3 staffs have a lot of guys.
Clifton Ellis had a great deal of success at Wagner,
right.
and is with you guys.
That's right. And a lot of great friendships there, and a lot of guys that will compete like heck on Friday night, but can put it aside and call each other after the games. And hey man, I know we got you, but good luck next week. And it's good to see, because that's the way it should be. We're in the end of this thing, we're all trying to make kids better and trying to make our communities better, and coaching can change the world, and we need to be good examples of that.
Well, and I think in the greater San Antonio area, excuse me, people that are observers of high school sports, particularly football and basketball, they kind of look to your school district and Judson School District to kind of help lead the way for pride in the greater San Antonio area, because y'all tend to have the better football and basketball programs between your 2 school districts. Of course, Judson's girls won state in basketball. Your Steel boys were right on the verge of playing for the state championship again this year. Your programs in football are legendary, but it's so hard, and you were part of the 2010 Steel staff that won the state championship. That's just hard to do. It's hard to come by. And I guess one of the bigger questions I look at when I see greater San Antonio sports and at the high school level is, you look at DFW and you look at Houston and how they've kind of had that trend towards the mega school.
Yeah.
where you have a lot of schools that are 3,500 plus enrollment, virtually all of the Cy-Fair School District, for example, 3,500 all the way up to Allen and 6,700 students, whereas the 6A schools in San Antonio are more or less downsizing. And so how do you balance that? We want to be the best as well. We want to win state championships, knowing that you're putting the school districts and the teams and the schools are putting themselves at a disadvantage by truly being half the size or maybe 50% smaller than a lot of your competition in other parts of the state.
Right. Yeah, I had a good conversation with someone, about that earlier, and that's a challenge for us. And those years that we were playing Katy in the semifinals, and we had 2,100 and they had 32 and 3,300. Not to take anything away from the great things that they've done there. And DeSoto played in state finals. I think they were at 34, 3,500, and we were 2,200. And so at some point, some level that catches that can catch up to you from a talent pool perspective. But that's San Antonio's philosophy, and I think it's a good and bad thing for coaches. It keeps things manageable. It keeps maybe those relationships with kids closer. I think that our leadership within our schools understand that. Sometimes we don't think they do, but I know our superintendent understands that, and that you're not losing your job because you didn't win a state title at Steele or Clemens High School, and it's about how you're treating kids and how you're treating people on a day-to-day basis, and maybe those smaller schools enable us to do that a little bit.
Well, I always say this, and I'm a big defender of San Antonio area high school anything, because I say you got to factor that in, what I just said about Dallas-Fort Worth and Houston, and there's great programs and great coaches there as well, even Austin for that matter. But I say pound for pound, if you factor in the enrollment part where the San Antonio schools tend to be smaller, I say pound for pound, you're playing just as good at football as anybody.
Yeah, I think so, and well-coached football. I mean, we had the privilege of playing so many of those DFW schools, Houston schools. These guys around San Antonio will test you from an X's and O's, and will scheme you up as good as anyone. And what that stems for, I don't know. Maybe it's just a familiarity with playing them so much. But I'd spend as much time in week one working O'Connor and all the stuff they were going to throw at us. That I was spending, week 5 versus a Katy or a DeSoto or whoever that may be. And testament to those coaches and their knowledge and the time they spend with kids.
Well, continued success to you at SCUCISD. We
Thanks,
miss you
Bobby.
on the sidelines, but you're kind of there anyways.
I am on the sidelines.
We see you in the press box. We see you in the sidelines.
I'm pacing a hole in the top of that press box. I think it's there's some concrete tracks that I've worn thin up there. That, I don't know if I may be more nervous now for football games than I was the head football coach, and that's I shouldn't be, because I've got great leadership of those programs right now. And those guys do a great job for kids.
And then broadcasters who can't get their stuff to work stress you out.
That's
too,
right. That's right. When you're talking about internet cables and things I have no knowledge of.
Well, you learn. You got to learn. You got to know all of it.
That's right. That's right. We'll
Scott,
get to it.
good to see you.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate you guys and what y'all do.
Scott Lehnhoff, the athletic director of Church-Cibolo Universal City Independent School District in northeast part of San Antonio. We'll be back with more from the 87th Annual Texas High School Coaches Association Convention in downtown Houston in just a moment here on TexasSportsProductions.com.